The fleet of many worlds sailed through the stars. At the center of this vast fleet was the flagship, the largest vessel ever built. It was not just a ship but a symbol. Entire colonies trusted its guidance. Smaller ships followed it like children following their parent. The flagship shone bright with silver plates and towers of glass that stretched upward like spires in a city. It was the pride of the fleet and the heart of their unity. Inside, the flagship was filled with life. Thousands of alien beings worked together. Their languages mixed like music in the great halls. Engineers watched over glowing screens, pilots guided navigation, and leaders met in chambers lined with shining light. The flagship never stopped. It was built to be perfect, to move without failure, to serve without error. Or so everyone believed. One quiet cycle, something unusual happened. The ship's lights flickered. A gentle hum that always filled the hall suddenly stuttered. It was small at first, so small that many thought it was nothing more than a brief shift in power. But then the sound grew weaker. Engines slowed. Entire sections of the ship dimmed into silence. An alarm rang across the corridors. The flagship was in trouble. Engineers of many species hurried to their stations. They studied their panels, scanned the systems, and called for solutions. Sparks lit in the great engine bay. Streams of code flashed across the screens. The engineers worked with skill and speed, but the ship refused to answer. One of the leaders, a tall being with clear skin that shimmered like glass, asked, "What has gone wrong?" The engineers gave the only answer they could: "We do not know." The flagship had been designed by the best builders from across the fleet. It was supposed to be flawless. Every circuit was shielded, every engine tested, every system woven into the next with precision. But now, those perfect systems had stopped. The very design that made the ship strong now made it impossible to repair. The engineers could not reach the hidden places. They could not see the tangled layers behind the walls. Their tools only read what the surface allowed, and the surface showed nothing useful. The fleet slowed to match the flagship's weakness. Smaller ships circled in worry. Without the flagship, the fleet was leaderless, drifting through open space. Fear spread quickly. The leaders of the fleet gathered in the council hall. The air inside was heavy. Voices rose as each leader gave their opinion. Some argued that they should return to the nearest station. Others said they must wait until their engineers discovered the problem. But the truth was clear. The flagship was silent, and no one knew how to wake it. Finally, one voice spoke with hesitation. It came from a small figure sitting quietly at the edge of the chamber. This being was not tall or shining like the others. Its skin was soft, its form plain. It was a human, one of the newest members of the fleet. "What if you let humans try?" the human asked. The chamber fell silent. Many leaders turned in surprise. Humans were new to the stars. They did not have grand fleets of their own. They were not known for shining technology or flawless design. To trust them with the flagship seemed unthinkable. A voice filled with doubt asked, "What can humans do that our finest engineers cannot?" The human looked down for a moment before replying, "We are not the best builders. But we know how to fix things when they break. On our home world, machines fail often. We do not abandon them. We climb inside, we patch them, we make them work again." The council exchanged uneasy glances. The idea seemed strange. For so long, the fleet had trusted only perfection. They did not crawl through engines. They did not touch the dirt of machines with their hands. But the flagship was dying, and nothing else worked. At last, the leader with the shimmering skin raised a hand. "Let the humans try. If they fail, we will lose nothing. If they succeed, the flagship may live." A message was sent to the nearest human vessel. Within hours, a small craft docked with the flagship. From it stepped a handful of humans in simple suits. They looked ordinary compared to the shining aliens, but their eyes carried determination. The aliens watched with mixed feelings. Some hoped, some doubted, some even laughed quietly at the thought that such plain beings could save the greatest ship of the fleet. The humans asked for only a few things. They wanted hand tools, simple lights, and full access to the inner passages of the ship. They did not bring grand machines or scanners. Instead, they carried belts of wrenches, spanners, and cutters. The aliens stared in confusion. These tools looked ancient, almost childish compared to the advanced equipment of the fleet. Yet the humans did not hesitate. They split into groups and entered the narrow halls of the flagship. Some crawled into vents. Others climbed behind walls. They tapped on pipes, listened to wires, and touched the walls as if the ship were alive. For the first time since the failure began, the halls of the flagship filled with a new kind of sound. It was not the hum of perfect engines or the song of advanced machines. It was the sound of hands at work, the sound of people who were not afraid to get close to the broken heart of the ship. The aliens waited and watched. The fate of the fleet now rested with the smallest and newest of its members. And so, the story of how only humans could repair the flagship had begun. The humans stepped into the grand corridors of the flagship. Their boots echoed against the polished floors. Around them, tall and graceful aliens watched in silence. The humans looked small and plain among such shining figures. Their clothing was simple, their tools old compared to the glowing instruments the aliens carried. Yet their eyes moved with focus, scanning every detail of the vast ship. One of the alien leaders walked forward. His tall frame shimmered with crystal-like skin, and his voice was clear. "You are welcome on this ship. But understand this. If even our finest minds cannot solve this failure, do not expect miracles. The flagship is not a simple craft. It is the crown of the fleet." The lead human nodded politely. "We understand. We do not promise miracles. We only ask to see for ourselves. Sometimes problems hide in small places." The alien leader frowned at the humble reply. To the council, it sounded too simple, even careless. Still, they stepped aside and allowed the humans to begin. The human crew divided their tasks quickly. Some took lights and belts of hand tools, preparing to enter the hidden passages of the ship. Others asked for diagrams of the systems. The diagrams were massive and complex, filled with glowing lines of energy and countless connections. The aliens expected the humans to struggle. But instead, the humans pointed out sections and whispered among themselves as if they were reading a map of streets. One human, a woman with steady eyes, placed her hand on the wall. She tapped it gently with her fingers. "The sound is uneven here," she said. "Something behind this wall is not flowing the way it should." The aliens exchanged puzzled looks. They had machines to measure such things, yet this human was using nothing but her hand and ear. They thought it was strange, even foolish, but they did not stop her. The humans entered the narrow shafts that ran like veins through the ship. These spaces were tight, filled with twisting pipes and hidden wires. Aliens rarely entered them because they were uncomfortable and dirty. But the humans moved with ease, crawling, climbing, and squeezing through the passages. Their simple lamps lit the darkness as they searched for faults. From the control room, the alien engineers watched the humans' progress through cameras. The engineers whispered among themselves. "They are touching the ship with bare hands. They are crawling as if they were animals. What could they possibly find this way?" Yet as the humans worked, they began to notice things the aliens had never seen. They found dust collecting on filters, wires bent at strange angles, and pipes that rattled when touched. None of these details showed up on the advanced scanners. To the humans, however, the signs were clear. One human called back through a communicator. "We have found a junction where energy lines cross too closely. It looks stable from the outside, but inside it is hot and damaged." The systems may be shutting down to protect themselves. Another human added, there are ducts blocked with debris. If air and coolant cannot flow, the ship overheats. That may be why so many parts are shutting down at once. The aliens were surprised. These were small problems, problems that seemed beneath notice. Yet they realized the flagship was built with so many layers of design that no one had thought about the simple things anymore. Meanwhile, the humans kept moving. They carried tools that looked basic, yet their hands worked with skill. They tightened bolts, cleared paths, and marked weak points. They did not wait for perfect solutions. They acted, step by step, as if repairing an old machine at home. Hours passed, and the atmosphere on the flagship began to change. The lights grew brighter in some sections. The faint hum of power returned to corridors that had fallen silent. Hope stirred among the watching aliens. One alien engineer finally admitted, they are making progress. Our tools told us nothing, yet their eyes and hands have found what we missed. The council gathered again, watching the humans on large screens. For the first time, the proud leaders began to see something new in these plain visitors. They did not look like great builders, but they carried a strength that came from patience and practice. The lead human wiped sweat from his brow as he crawled out of a shaft. His face was dirty, and his suit carried scratches from sharp edges. But his voice was calm. We will need more time. The ship has not suffered one large failure. It is filled with many small wounds. We must find them all. The alien leader with crystal-like skin asked, can you truly heal them all? The human gave a small smile. We will not stop trying. Where we come from, nothing stays perfect forever. That is why we learn to repair. If something breaks, we fix it. That is how we live. The hall grew quiet. Those simple words touched the council more deeply than they expected. They had always trusted machines to last forever, believing perfection would never fade. But perfection had failed them. Now, it was the humans who showed a path forward. The aliens stood aside, no longer mocking or doubting. They watched with respect as the humans returned to their work. The fate of the flagship, and perhaps the fleet itself, rested in those determined hands. The humans kept moving through the flagship like explorers in a vast cave. The ship was enormous, and its inside stretched like a maze. Narrow ladders led to dark chambers, long pipes ran above their heads, and wires crossed in tangled knots. The humans carried only their small lamps, but those lights were enough to reveal things the aliens had never noticed. One human, a man with steady hands, brushed away dust on a control panel hidden behind a wall. This section is not even on the main diagram, he said. His voice echoed through the communicator to the control room where the alien engineers listened. It looks like an old system left behind when new ones were built. The aliens leaned closer to the screens, confused. They had designed the flagship with elegance and order. To them, the ship was a perfect structure. The idea that forgotten parts still existed inside its walls made no sense. Yet the humans kept finding them. Another human called from a different passage. I found ducts blocked with layers of dirt and fibers. Airflow has been stopping for a long time. That explains the overheating in nearby sections. The aliens were astonished. Their scanners had shown nothing. To their machines, the systems looked normal. But the humans trusted their eyes and their touch. They brushed away dust, tapped the walls, and listened to the way pipes carried sound. What seemed invisible to advanced technology appeared clear to human senses. The lead human gathered the team in a wide chamber where energy lines pulsed like glowing rivers across the walls. The flagship does not have one single break, he said. It suffers from many small wounds. Loose wires, blocked vents, worn joints, all hidden behind walls. Together, these small faults have grown into a storm. The aliens in the control room heard his words with unease. They had never thought about small faults. Their design philosophy was perfection. Every system was made to last without error. Yet perfection had created fragility. When even small things went wrong, no one noticed until it was too late. The humans continued searching. They crawled deeper than any alien had gone. Some passages were so narrow they had to slide on their stomachs. Others were hot from trapped energy, forcing them to pause and cool down before pressing forward. Their faces grew marked with sweat and dust, but their determination never faded. One woman reached a deep junction where wires twisted together like roots of an old tree. She called through the communicator, "I see burned marks here." Two lines must have crossed and sparked. Instead of shutting down only this small part, the system above it closed half the power grid to prevent damage. The aliens gasped. Their perfect design, meant to protect the ship, had shut down huge sections because of one small spark. The humans had discovered what their machines could not. Meanwhile, in the council hall, the leaders gathered again. They watched the reports and heard the voices of humans echoing through the chamber. One leader whispered, "We thought them simple. Yet they see things our machines cannot." Another leader replied, "Perhaps it is because they accept imperfection. They do not expect their machines to last forever. They expect them to break, so they learn to mend them. We never learned that lesson." Back inside the ship's hidden veins, the humans worked together. They made notes of each fault, marking them with bright tags so they could return and repair. They cleared debris from ducts, straightened twisted pipes, and rewired sections by hand. None of these tasks looked grand, but with each small act, the flagship began to respond. In one corridor, lights that had been dark for hours suddenly glowed again. In another, the steady hum of energy returned to the walls. The aliens who lived aboard felt the change. They stepped out of their rooms, surprised to see their halls alive once more. The humans did not stop to celebrate. They knew the flagship was still weak. It would take time to heal all its wounds. Yet their progress carried hope, and hope spread quickly among the fleet. At the end of a long shift, the lead human gathered his team once more. His voice was tired but steady. "We are learning something important. The flagship is not just a machine of glass and steel. It is more like a living forest. Layers have grown on top of layers. Some parts are strong, some are weak, and many are forgotten. If we treat it like a perfect design, it will fail. If we treat it like a living thing, we can help it survive." The aliens in the control room listened closely. The comparison was strange to them, but it carried truth. Their grand ship, built as the symbol of unity, was not flawless. It was fragile, filled with hidden faults. And only the humans had the patience to see it for what it really was. As the humans prepared to rest, the alien leader with crystal-like skin spoke quietly to the council. "Let us not doubt them again. They may not build as we do, but they have something we have long forgotten. They have the wisdom of repair." That night, the flagship remained damaged, but it no longer felt lost. For the first time since the breakdown began, the fleet felt a spark of faith. Humanity, the smallest and newest of their allies, had uncovered the hidden truth of the flagship. And with that truth came a chance to save it. The humans began their real work the next cycle. They had mapped the hidden faults of the flagship, and now it was time to repair them. The ship was enormous, but they did not feel afraid of its size. They treated it the way they treated old machines back on Earth, one problem at a time, one piece at a time. The first task was clearing the blocked ducts. Air and coolant had stopped moving through them, causing engines and circuits to overheat. The humans climbed inside the ducts with brushes, cloths, and small scrapers. They pushed out layers of dust and fibers that had gathered for years. The air soon began to flow again, and the temperature in nearby sections dropped. An alien engineer watched from a screen, amazed. "We would never think of using hands for such work. We rely on machines to clean machines." but these humans crawl inside and do it themselves. The lead human answered through his communicator, sometimes the only way is to be close to the problem. Machines cannot reach every corner. Next, they moved to the tangled wires hidden behind the walls. Some lines had bent or rubbed against each other, causing sparks. The humans carefully separated the wires, replaced damaged parts, and tied them so they would not touch again. They used tools so simple that the aliens found it hard to believe. Yet every repair brought life back to a section of the ship. When one small energy line was restored, the lights of an entire hall flickered on. The aliens living there cheered and clapped. They had been in darkness for days, waiting without hope. Now their halls glowed bright again. The humans worked without pride or boasting. They wiped sweat from their brows, smiled at one another, and then moved to the next fault. To them, repair was not about glory. It was about duty. Machines break, and people fix them. That was all. Some passages were so narrow that only one person could fit. A young human crawled deep into a shaft no alien dared to enter. His lamp lit a broken valve, stuck shut with rust and heat. He struck it gently with his tool, turned it by hand, and freed it. Coolant began to flow again through the pipes. The hum of engines nearby grew steadier. From the council hall, the alien leaders watched the progress. Their voices carried a new tone, no longer filled with doubt but with quiet respect. One leader said, "They are not fast, and they are not elegant. Yet they succeed where we failed. Every small action they take matters." Another leader nodded. "It is as if they mend not only the ship but the spirit of the fleet. Their work gives us hope." Hours turned into days, and the humans kept repairing. Their suits grew dirty, their hands rough, but they never stopped. They worked in pairs, supporting each other. One held a lamp while the other turned a bolt. One pulled a cable while the other tightened it. Their teamwork was simple, yet it was powerful. The aliens, who were used to perfect machines working alone, saw something new in this way of labor. They began to realize that strength was not only in design but also in cooperation and persistence. At one point, the lead human sat with the alien engineers in the control room. He showed them the notes his team had made. The notes were not neat diagrams but quick sketches and written lines. "These are the weak spots we found," he explained. "They are not part of your grand systems, but they connect to them. If you ignore them, the flagship will keep failing." The alien engineers studied the simple sketches. At first, they were unsure how to read them. But soon they understood. The humans had created a map not of perfect systems but of faults and repairs. It was a map of survival, not of perfection. The engineers began to follow the humans' way. They sent small teams to assist with cleaning and tightening. They did not enter the tightest spaces, but they carried tools, passed supplies, and learned by watching. Slowly, a bridge of trust grew between the species. One evening, after a long cycle of work, the humans gathered in a quiet corner of the ship. They sat on the floor, tired but smiling. The lead human looked around at his team. "We are making progress," he said. "The flagship is like an old engine back home. It complains, it creaks, but if we keep caring for it, it will run again." The aliens who overheard those words carried them back to the council. They repeated them with wonder, for no alien would ever speak of a great ship as if it were an old friend. Yet the humans spoke with warmth, not fear. They saw the flagship not as a perfect machine but as something worth saving. By the end of that cycle, more than half of the dark sections of the ship were alive again. The hum of engines returned to the halls. The crew felt the difference, and their hearts lifted. The council leader with crystal-like skin stood before the gathered fleet and declared, "The humans have given us back the voice of our flagship. They do not build as we do, but their hands hold the power to heal. Let us honor them and learn from them." The words spread across the ships of the fleet. For the first time, the humans were no longer seen as new and uncertain allies. They were seen as the repairers of the heart of the fleet. And still, they worked on, one fault at a time, until the flagship was ready to rise again. The humans paused for a short rest, sitting in a small chamber deep inside the flagship. Their lamps cast warm light on the walls, showing pipes and wires they had already repaired. Sweat covered their faces, and their clothes were dirty. Yet their eyes were bright with determination. The lead human looked around at the team. "We are not done yet," he said. "There is still work to do. But we are learning something important. The ship is not broken because of one big fault. It is failing because we have ignored the small ones. Machines, like life, need attention. They need care." One young human nodded. "On our world, we often fix old machines. They are not perfect, but they survive because we pay attention. The same is true for this ship." The aliens observing the humans from the control room were silent. They had spent centuries designing perfect vessels. Perfection was their highest value. They did not see the need for care beyond what their systems automatically provided. Yet, watching the humans, they began to understand a new way. A small group of aliens joined the humans in one chamber. They had tools of their own, advanced and precise, but they watched the humans carefully. One asked, "Why do you use such simple methods?" "We have machines that can repair faster." The lead human smiled. "Machines follow instructions. They cannot think about what is hidden or forgotten. They cannot feel where something is weak. Hands and eyes can notice small problems that scanners miss. Sometimes, the simple way is the best way." The aliens looked around the chamber. The humans were right. Every pipe they touched, every wire they adjusted, seemed to bring life back to the ship. Small corrections added up. Sections that had been dark and silent now glowed with energy. Engines hummed steadily. The lead human continued, "On our world, people learn that nothing stays perfect. Buildings crack, machines rust, systems fail. If you ignore the small problems, the big ones follow. If you care for the small, the big can survive." The alien engineers listened carefully. Their faces showed wonder. They had never considered this approach. Their ships were designed for perfection. The humans were teaching them a new lesson, that imperfection was not weakness. It was a signal to act, a call to care. The humans split into teams and began inspecting the remaining sections. One team cleaned filters and ducts. Another team repaired loose wires and tightened bolts. A third team checked cooling systems and small valves. Each human moved quickly but carefully, treating the ship as if it were alive. As they worked, they spoke to the aliens who helped. "This pipe is weak," one human said. "If it bursts, it will shut down the engines. Let's reinforce it together." The alien nodded and followed the instructions. Slowly, they began to see the ship not as a perfect machine but as a living system. Each small action mattered. Each repair made a difference. In one narrow passage, a young human crawled beside an alien engineer. "See this joint?" the human asked. "It has worn out. A machine would miss it. We need to adjust it by hand." The alien touched the joint and felt the subtle movement. "You are right," he admitted. "I would never have noticed this." By the end of the cycle, more than 3/4 of the small faults were fixed. The flagship systems ran smoother than they had since the breakdown began. The corridors glowed with light. Engines hummed like a steady heartbeat. The council gathered once again. The leaders of the fleet listened as the human team reported their progress. They spoke of the small faults, the hidden dangers, and the care needed to keep the ship alive. The crystal-skinned leader spoke to the council. "We have learned from the humans that strength is not only in design or size. Strength is in patience, in attention, in caring for what is imperfect. They have shown us that even the greatest ship can survive when treated with wisdom and care. Across the fleet, aliens whispered to one another. For the first time, they saw humans as more than simple newcomers. They saw them as teachers, as beings who carried knowledge of survival that no machine or design could match. The humans, however, did not boast. They returned to their work with quiet determination. Their focus was not praise but the next step, the next repair. Each fault corrected was another chance for the flagship to live fully. As night passed inside the ship, the humans rested briefly. They knew there was still work to do. Yet the lesson they had shared with the aliens had already taken root. The fleet had learned that perfection was not enough, and that care, attention, and patience could be stronger than brilliance alone. The flagship had begun to live again, not as a flawless machine, but as a system repaired by hands that understood its hidden heart. And with this understanding, the humans had earned the respect of the fleet. The flagship was no longer quiet. Its engines hummed steadily, and its lights shone bright in the long corridors. The humans had repaired most of the hidden faults. Small pipes were fixed, ducts were cleared, wires were straightened, and energy flows were restored. The ship seemed to breathe again. Aliens walked through the halls, amazed at the transformation. They had never seen the flagship so alive after a breakdown. The corridors no longer felt empty and dull. Instead, they pulsed with life, the rhythm of machines and systems working together. The humans moved through the ship calmly. They checked every section, making small adjustments where needed. Every fix added more stability. They were careful not to rush, knowing that perfection was not the goal. The goal was to make the flagship strong enough to carry the fleet safely. From the control room, the alien engineers watched the displays. They had grown quiet, observing the humans at work. They could see how the simple, patient methods restored the ship in ways their machines could not. Every repaired line, every cleared duct, and every tightened bolt strengthened the flagship's systems. One young human climbed into a tight vent with a small wrench. He carefully adjusted a valve that controlled coolant flow to the engines. When it was done, the engines roared with renewed power. The hum became steady and strong. The human pulled himself out, tired but smiling. "The engines are stable," he called. The aliens cheered quietly from the control room. For days, they had feared the flagship might never recover. Now, hope filled the halls. They had doubted humans before, but the humans' quiet determination had changed everything. The lead human gathered his team in the central chamber. "Most of the hidden faults are fixed," he said. "The ship is ready to rise again. But we must be careful. Small systems still need attention. Let us finish them." They moved systematically. One team inspected communication lines, making sure the fleet could stay connected. Another team checked energy conduits, ensuring power flowed evenly. A third team went through life support systems, confirming that air, water, and heat reached every corner of the flagship. Aliens began to help more actively. They carried tools, held lamps, and followed the humans' instructions. The bond between humans and aliens grew stronger with each small repair. For the first time, the fleet worked together in true cooperation. When the final checks were complete, the flagship was ready. The humans stepped back, allowing the alien engineers to activate the main systems. Lights brightened across the ship. Energy flowed smoothly. The engines roared steadily, carrying the weight of the fleet. The council gathered in the main hall to witness the flagship's revival. The crystal-skinned leader stood tall. "The humans have done what we could not," he said. "They have repaired the flagship, restored its strength, and shown us a way to survive when perfection fails. They are now a part of our fleet's heart." The other leaders nodded. Some stepped forward to shake hands with the humans. Others bowed respectfully. The humans accepted the gestures quietly, smiling but not boasting. They had done what they were trained to do, repair what was broken and help life continue. Across the fleet, smaller ships felt the change. The flagship's steady engines sent signals of stability. Pilots reported smoother navigation, brighter lights, and a sense of safety. The humans' work had not only restored the flagship but had strengthened the entire fleet. The lead human spoke to the council once more. We did not fix the flagship with magic or advanced machines. We did it with patience, care, and teamwork. The ship is not perfect. It may have small faults in the future. But if we continue to watch, repair, and care, it will serve the fleet for a long time. The council listened carefully. The lesson was clear. Perfection alone could not protect them. It was patience, understanding, and willingness to act that kept the fleet safe. In the quiet of the central chamber, the humans looked around at their team. They were tired, dirty, and marked by long days of work. Yet their hearts were full. They had not only repaired the flagship, but they had also earned the trust and respect of the fleet. Aliens came forward to thank them personally. One young engineer, still unsure of humans at the beginning, said softly, "I will never doubt your ways again. You see things we cannot. Your hands and hearts are strong." The humans nodded humbly. They had no desire for praise. Their work was complete, and the flagship was alive. That was enough. As the fleet prepared to continue its journey across the stars, the humans remained quietly in the flagship. They had proven that even when perfection fails, life and effort can restore strength. The flagship's hum was steady, a sign that it had survived, thanks to human hands and human care. For the first time since the breakdown, the fleet felt truly united. Not by design, not by size or power, but by trust, respect, and the quiet strength of those willing to repair what others thought impossible. The fleet moved forward once again, gliding through the stars. The flagship led the way, strong and steady. Its engines hummed with life, lights glowed across every hall, and the ship felt alive. The humans had repaired the hidden faults, restored systems, and brought hope back to every corner. The aliens aboard the flagship and other ships looked at humans with new respect. These small, plain beings had done what even their most advanced engineers could not. They had entered tight passages, touched forgotten wires, cleaned blocked ducts, and restored the ship's heartbeat. They had shown patience, skill, and care that no machine could match. The council gathered again, this time not to discuss problems, but to honor achievement. The crystal-skinned leader spoke first. The humans have done more than repair a ship. They have taught us a lesson we will not forget. Strength is not only in design or power. It is in patience, attention, and willingness to act when others cannot. Other leaders nodded. They shared stories of how humans had worked in places they themselves could not reach. They told of careful hands and eyes that saw hidden faults, of clever minds that solved problems without fancy tools. Respect grew across the fleet like a quiet fire, warming every corner of the ships. The humans did not seek praise. They walked through the corridors, checking minor systems and smiling at crew members. Their work was done, but they continued to care for the ship. They spoke with alien engineers, sharing simple methods of repair and teamwork. Slowly, the aliens began to adopt these methods, learning the value of attention and persistence. One young alien approached the lead human. "I doubted you at first," she said. "I thought your ways were too simple. But you see things we could not. You treat machines as living things, and now the flagship lives again. I am grateful." The human smiled. "We do not expect thanks. We only know that if something is broken, it should be fixed. That is how we survive." Across the fleet, word of the human success spread. Smaller ships shared reports, pilots spoke of smooth travel, and engineers noted fewer faults. Humans became known as the guardians of the flagship. Wherever a system faltered, humans were called to examine it. Their skill was trusted, not because of their technology, but because of their careful, patient approach. In the flagship's main chamber, the humans gathered one last time. They looked around at the wide halls, glowing panels, and humming engines. "We have done what we could," said the lead human. "The ship is not perfect, and it never will be. But it is strong enough to carry the fleet safely. That is enough for now." The other humans nodded. Their mission had been dangerous in its own way, but it was successful. They had faced an impossible task and completed it with simple tools, steady hands, and clear minds. They had proven that sometimes, the smallest and simplest actions can make the greatest difference. The alien leaders visited them personally. Some bowed, some shook hands, and some offered gifts of small crystals or glowing tools. These gestures were symbols of respect, but the humans accepted them quietly. Their reward was the knowledge that the fleet was safe, the flagship alive, and their work appreciated. The young human who had crawled through the narrowest ducts looked out of a window at the stars. He thought of home and how humans had always learned to repair, fix, and care for what seemed broken. Now they had done the same on a grand scale, across worlds and species. Humanity had left its mark not with weapons or power, but with patience, wisdom, and hands willing to work. In the corridors, aliens began to speak differently of humans. They no longer saw them as newcomers or weak. They saw them as problem solvers, teachers, and friends. The respect grew quietly but steadily. Humans had earned a place at the heart of the fleet. As the flagship led the fleet into uncharted space, the humans worked with calm confidence. They were ready to face new problems, new challenges, and new repairs. The fleet trusted them, the flagship relied on them, and the humans had proven that their strength lay not in what they could build, but in what they could restore. The story of how humans had saved the flagship spread across stars. It became a tale of patience, care, and determination. Every species learned that perfection alone was not enough. Sometimes, the hands and hearts willing to repair were the true heroes. And so, the fleet continued its journey. Strong, united, and guided by the flagship, it moved with confidence. The humans walked through its corridors, quiet but proud. They had repaired what was broken, taught what was needed, and earned a place among the stars. The flagship hummed like a living heart, carrying the fleet forward. It had survived not through perfection, but through the care of humanity.